The Camaro legend, an American hero's journey. The year was 1964, when one car flipped the entire American auto industry on its head. Ford dropped the Mustang like a bomb, and suddenly every other manufacturer looked slow, old, and unprepared. But deep inside Chevrolet's headquarters, that shock didn't create panic. It created pressure, the dangerous kind, because Chevy suddenly had to build a machine that didn't just compete, it had to hunt, it had to face an impossible deadline. Engineers arguing day and night over weight distribution, suspension geometry, and whether this new car should be a refined cruiser or a street-fighting muscle monster. And then came the twist. When someone finally asked what this new car would be called, a designer smirked and said, "Camaro, a small, vicious animal that eats Mustangs." But behind that legendary quote was a brutal truth. The Camaro was born in a war it didn't start, and it had to survive challenges no one thought Chevrolet could overcome. This is the story of how America's underdog rose from pressure, deadlines, and rivalry, and became a legend. The year was 1964, and the automotive world had just been turned upside down. Ford had unleashed something special, the Mustang. It wasn't just a car, it was a cultural earthquake. Suddenly, America's youth had their own chariot, affordable and stylish, with just enough muscle to make their hearts race. Dealerships couldn't keep them on the lots. The Mustang was selling like hotcakes at a Sunday breakfast, and every rival manufacturer watched in stunned silence as Ford rewrote the rules. Down in Detroit, inside the halls of General Motors, a different emotion was brewing. Not defeat, not surrender, but something more primal: determination. Chevrolet felt the call. The challenge had been thrown down, and they weren't about to let Ford have all the glory. America needed a hero, a sports car that was powerful, stylish, and more aggressive than anything Chevrolet had ever built. They needed something that could stand toe-to-toe with the Mustang and punch back harder. The decision was made. Chevrolet would answer the call to adventure, and when that name finally emerged from the design studios, Camaro, someone asked what it meant. The response became legendary. It's a small, vicious animal that eats Mustangs. The battle lines were drawn. Behind every great machine are great minds, and the Camaro had an army of them. Inside the GM Tech Center, engineers rolled up their sleeves and worked late into the night. These weren't just employees clocking in and out. These were craftsmen, artists, warriors in the great automotive war. Designers sketched and resketched, searching for that perfect line, that aggressive stance, that unmistakable silhouette that would make people stop and stare. The executives believed in the vision. The engineers obsessed over every detail: suspension geometry, weight distribution, chassis rigidity. The designers dreamed in chrome and steel, imagining a car that would capture the spirit of American youth. They had one mission: balance muscle with style, performance with affordability, and raw power with everyday drivability. These visionaries understood something deeper than horsepower and sheet metal. They were creating a cultural symbol, a rolling statement of independence and freedom. This wasn't just about beating Ford, it was about capturing lightning in a bottle, creating something that would echo through the decades. But greatness never comes easy. While Ford's Mustang dominated headlines and showrooms, Chevrolet faced crushing pressure. Every day the Mustang stayed unchallenged was a day lost. The clock was ticking, and the entire automotive world was watching, waiting to see if Chevrolet could deliver. The challenges were enormous. The chassis had to be perfect, responsive yet stable, agile yet solid. Weight distribution became an obsession. Engine options needed to span from economical inline sixes to earth-shaking V8s, giving buyers choices without compromising the Camaro's identity. Inside the company, debates raged. Should they prioritize pure performance or daily comfort? How aggressive should the styling be? Could they meet the deadline without cutting corners? The unofficial pony car war intensified with each passing month. Ford wasn't standing still. They were improving the Mustang, adding more options, capturing more hearts. Time was running out. The team pushed harder, tested more, refined endlessly. They knew one truth: when the Camaro finally emerged, it had to be perfect. Second place wasn't an option. And then the world saw it. That low, wide stance, those aggressive curves, the split-front grille that looked like it was ready to devour the competition, sweeping body lines that made it look fast even when it was standing still. The Camaro didn't just look bold, it looked dangerous in the best possible way. When people first laid eyes on the Camaro, something happened. Heads turned. Conversations stopped. That's the moment Chevrolet knew they'd succeeded. The exterior screamed youth and rebellion. It wasn't trying to be sophisticated or refined. It was raw, honest, and unapologetically aggressive. This was a car for people who wanted to be noticed, who wanted to feel alive every time they gripped the wheel. Step inside, and the magic continued. Bucket seats hugged you tight. Sporty gauges laid out vital information with military precision. The driver-focused cockpit made you feel like a fighter pilot preparing for takeoff. Every switch, every dial, every surface said one thing. This car was made for driving. The design connected instantly with Americans because it spoke their language. It was attitude wrapped in steel. It was style married to substance. It was the perfect reflection of an era when anything seemed possible. But a beautiful body needs a powerful heart, and the Camaro delivered thunder. The engine options were staggering. From the reliable straight six for the practical-minded to the legendary V8s that became the stuff of dreams, the small block 327, the mighty 350, and for those who wanted to shake the earth, the big block monsters that turned the Camaro into a barely legal street weapon. When you fired up a Camaro V8, the world knew it. That deep rumble at idle, the sharp, aggressive growl when you pressed the accelerator. This wasn't just mechanical noise. This was the heartbeat of American muscle, the sound of freedom itself. The SS variant became an instant legend. The Z28, designed for racing homologation, turned into a street terror and track champion. These weren't just fast cars, they were weapons. Precision instruments that could embarrass vehicles costing twice as much. Performance numbers that shocked critics and thrilled drivers. Quarter-mile times that made headlines, lap times that proved the Camaro wasn't just about straight-line speed. It could handle corners, too. Car lovers didn't just appreciate the Camaro's power, they fell in love with it. The raw, unfiltered responsiveness, the feeling that you were in complete control of something genuinely dangerous, that intoxicating combination of power and possibility. Here's what surprised people. The Camaro wasn't just a weekend warrior, it was comfortable. Sure, it could unleash hell on the drag strip, but it could also cruise comfortably to work on Monday morning. The ride was surprisingly smooth, the seats were genuinely supportive, the big windows offered excellent visibility. You could take it on a cross-country road trip and arrive fresh, ready for adventure. American families love this balance. Dad could have his muscle car and use it for daily driving. Young couples could pack it up for weekend getaways. It showed up at drive-ins, cruised down Main Street on summer nights, and parked proudly in driveways across the country. The Camaro became more than transportation. It became a lifestyle. It was freedom on four wheels. It was youth and rebellion wrapped in practical, everyday usability. It was the car you drove to work, showed off to friends, raced on weekends, and dreamed about during boring meetings. Families formed emotional bonds with their Camaros that lasted lifetimes. These weren't just vehicles, they were family members, trusted companions, sources of pride and joy. Fathers taught sons to drive in Camaros. First dates happened in Camaros. Life's biggest moments had a Camaro in the background. Even today, decades later, sitting in a classic Camaro feels familiar, comfortable, and emotionally powerful. The legacy continued through every generation, each one keeping the legend alive while adding new chapters to the story. When the Camaro officially launched on September 29, 1967, it didn't just enter the market. It exploded onto the scene. The public reaction was electric. Young drivers lined up at dealerships, checkbooks in hand. Enthusiasts pored over spec sheets, debating engine options and trim levels. Automotive journalists raved about the performance, the styling, the sheer rightness of what Chevrolet had created. The Camaro started winning races almost immediately. SCCA championships, Trans Am victories, drag strip records. It proved itself on every type of track, silencing any doubters who thought it was all show and no go. The rivalry with the Mustang became legendary, not bitter, but exciting, pushing both cars to be better. It was the automotive equivalent of Ali versus Frazier, Magic versus Bird, a competition that elevated everyone involved. Pop culture embraced the Camaro. It appeared in movies and TV shows. Musicians sang about it. It became shorthand for American cool, a symbol recognized around the world. The Camaro influenced automotive history in ways still felt today. It proved that American manufacturers could build cars that were fast, stylish, and affordable. It showed that muscle cars could be daily drivers. It demonstrated that with enough determination and skill, you could create something truly legendary. More than 50 years later, the Camaro remains an icon. It's more than a car. It became a part of American identity. It represents an era when optimism ran high, when anything seemed possible, when you could buy genuine excitement for an honest price. For those who grew up in the 60s and 70s, the Camaro isn't just nostalgia. It's a time machine, a connection to youth, freedom, and endless summer nights. The rumble of that V8 doesn't just stir memories, it stirs souls. The Camaro answered the call to adventure and became a legend. It faced impossible challenges and emerged victorious. It captured hearts and never let go. That's why the Camaro legend endures. That's why classic Camaros are cherished and restored with loving care. That's why the name still carries weight, still turns heads, still makes hearts beat a little faster. The Camaro didn't just eat Mustangs. It earned a permanent place in American automotive history and in American hearts. And that, friends, is how a legend is born.